He would ask her to do things that made her uncomfortable, like giving him massage and sitting on his lap for long periods. In the land of Agundu lies a young woman named Ajoke. Ajoke had always been a strong woman. Since her late husband, Mr. Saka, passed away all of a sudden, without any illness or any form of discomfort. It felt like the world had come crashing down on her and her little daughter. For months, she struggled to keep herself and her 12-year-old daughter Ajumi strong. The days were long, filled with grief, sorrow, and no one to take care of them. But Ajoke knew she had to stay strong for her daughter. When Aremu, a well-respected man in Agundu, entered their lives, it seems like a blessing. Aremu was kind, charming, and attentive. He seemed genuinely interested in helping Ajoke and her daughter move past their sorrows. He would bring small gifts for Ajumi, tell her stories, and make her laugh. Ajoke started to believe that maybe, just maybe, they could find happiness again. Ajoke, captured by Aremu's kind heart and generosity towards them, began to fall in love with him. Like a dream, Aremu and Ajoke started going out. After a year of dating, Ajoke and Aremu decided to get married. The ceremony was small but beautiful, with close families and friends in attendance. Ajoke wore a bright, colorful dress that reflects the joy she felt. Ajumi, in a pretty white gown, carried flowers and smiled brightly, happy to see her mother happy. Accepting Aremu as a new father wasn't easy for Ajumi at all. She missed her father deeply and didn't quite understand why her mother needed to marry someone new. Yet, she liked Aremu and tried her best to adjust to this new family life. The new house was different from their old one. It was bigger, with a large backyard where Ajumi could play. Aremu made sure her room was decorated just the way she liked it, with her favorite dolls and posters of animals. He often told her that she was special and that they would be a happy family, but Ajumi never understood that statement. However, as the week turns into months, Ajumi started to feel a little unease. Aremu seems different when they were alone. Sometimes he would stare at her in a way that made her uncomfortable. Other times he would insist on spending time with her in ways that felt odd even to a 12-year-old child. Ajoke, on the other hand, was too happy with her new life that she did not even notice any of these changes. She was busy managing the house, working and trying to keep everything running smoothly. She believed that Aremu was a perfect partner and he loved Ajumi as his own daughter. She saw their life together as a new beginning, a chance to rebuild and move forward. Despite her unease and fear, Ajumi tried to tell herself that everything was okay. She didn't want to upset her mother, who seems very happy, but a part of her couldn't shake off the feeling that something was not quite right. Aremu's attention was beginning to feel more like a trap than a comforting presence. Well, Ajumi's life went on with schools, chores, and family dinners. Ajumi played in the backyard, listened to her mother's stories about their cultural heritage, and tried to keep her fears to herself. She learned about the rich traditions of their people, the folklore stories filled with wisdom and warnings, and the spirit that protected them. Yet, despite these cultural stories that spoke of strength and confidence, Ajumi felt more vulnerable than ever. She missed the safety and warmth of her father's presence, and no matter how much she tried, she couldn't find that same comfort with Aremu, her stepfather. Her mother's new husband was somehow a strange man to her, and each day, the shadow of her fears grew darker. In the silence of her room at night, Ajumi would often cry quietly, wishing for her father's return, wishing for the simplicity of their old life. She held on to her father's photograph, whispering to it, hoping for some kind of guidance or sign that everything would be alright. One day, While playing in the backyard, Ajumi found a pendant her father had given her that she had accidentally lost. It was a symbol of protection from their tribe, a reminder that she was never alone. She held it tightly, hoping it would give her the courage she needed to face whatever lies ahead. She knew she had to be brave, not just for herself, but for her mother's sake. Ajoke's new beginning was filled with hope, but for Ajumi, it was just a journey into the unknown, filled with unseen shadows and silent fears. The path ahead was uncertain, but deep within her, Ajumi knew that she had to find a way to protect herself and uncover the truth about her new stepfather, Aremu. Ajumi woke up to the soft light of dawn, filtering through her bedroom window. The birds were all singing, and the scent of breakfast sprayed through the air. She rubbed her eyes and stretched, trying to shake off the lingering unease from the night before. It was a new dawn, and she hoped it would be a good one. As she made way to the kitchen, she found her mother Ajoke busy frying akara balls. Aremu sat at the table, sipping his morning coffee and reading the newspaper. He looked up and smiled as Ajumi entered the parlor. "Good morning, sunshine," he greeted her warmly. "Did you sleep well?" Ajumi nodded, forcing a smile. "Yes, Uncle Aremu. Come sit," Ajoke called out, patting the chair next to her. "Breakfast is almost ready." Ajumi took her seat and watched her mother move around the kitchen with happiness and ease. Ajoke's presence was comforting, a reminder of the strength and love that had always surrounded her. Yet, despite the familiar warmth of the kitchen, Ajumi couldn't shake off the strange feelings that had settled in her heart. After breakfast, Aremu suggested they all go for a walk in the nearby forest since it was a weekend. Ajoke agreed, thinking it would be a wonderful way to spend the morning. Ajumi hesitated, but didn't want to disappoint her mother. She put on her sandals and followed them outside. The forest was fresh and vibrant, filled with the sound of nature. Birds sang from the treetops and the leaves dancing gently in the breeze. Ajumi loved the forest. It was a place where she could escape and feel free. But today, even the forest couldn't ease her unease. As they walked, Aremu slowed his step to match with Ajumi's own. He held her hand, which made her more uncomfortable, but she didn't pull away. She looked up at him, trying to understand the man who had become an important part of their lives. "Do you like the forest, Ajumi?" Aremu asked, his voice soft and kind. "Yes, I do," she replied quietly. "It's beautiful here." Aremu smiled. "It is. There are many stories about this forest, you know. Tales of spirit and ancient guardians." Ajumi nodded. She loved the stories her mother told her, stories of their culture and the spirit that watched over them. But Aremu's stories felt different and scary somehow. As they continued their walk, Aremu began to tell her a story about a forest spirit that protects children. Ajumi listened, trying to focus on the tale, but her mind kept drifting back to the strange feeling she had been having. She wished she could talk to her mother about it, but she didn't know how to explain what she was feeling and how her mother would react. When they returned home, Ajumi went to her room to play. She took out her dolls and arranged them in a circle, pretending they were having a tea party. But even in the midst of her play, she couldn't shake off the feelings that something was wrong. That night, as she lay in bed, Ajumi thought about the day. She thought about Aremu and the way he looked at her. She remembered the story her mother had told her about the spirit that protects their people. She wished for the protection now, more than ever. Days turned into weeks, and Ajumi noticed more strange behaviors from Aremu. He would often call her to sit with him alone, away from her mother. He would ask her to do things that made her uncomfortable, like giving him massage, touching some parts of him that is meant to be private, or sitting on his lap for a long period. Each time, She felt a knot of fear tighten in her stomach, but she didn't know how to tell her mother. One evening, while Ajoke was out at a community meeting, Aremu called Ajumi to the living room. He sat on the couch and patted the seat next to him for her to come sit. Ajumi hesitated at the doorway, feeling a chill run down her spine. "Come sit with me, Ajumi," Aremu said, his voice calm but with commanding tone. I have homework to do," she stammered, hoping to avoid him. "It can wait," Aremu replied, a hint of anger in his tone. "Come here." Reluctantly and scared, Ajumi walked over and sat down. Aremu put his arm around her shoulders and she shifted. He started talking about how much he cared for her and wanted to be close to her like how he is close with her mother, and wanted them to be intimate with each other. He told her he would be gentle and easy on her if she remains a good girl. His words were both sweet and scary, and they made her skin shiver. He warned her never to disclose what he had said and his intention toward her to anybody, or else she wouldn't like the consequences. As he spoke, Ajumi's mind raced. She remembered the pendant her father had given her, the symbol of protection. She wished she had it with her now. She needed to find a way to escape, but she didn't know how. Just then, the sound of the front door opening interrupted them. Ajoke had returned. Aremu quickly pulled his arm away and stood up, smiling as if nothing has happened. "Welcome back, dear," he greeted Ajoke cheerfully. Ajumi quickly slipped away and ran to her room. She closed the door behind her and leaned against it, breathing heavily. She knew she had to do something, but she didn't know what to do. The unseen shadow of her fear grew larger than ever, and she felt more alone than ever. That night, Ajumi heard her father's pendant close and whispered a prayer to the spirits. She prayed for strength, for courage, and for a way to protect herself from the darkness that seemed to be closing in around her. She didn't know what the future holds, but she vowed to find a way to uncover the truth and protect herself and her mother from Aremu's unseen shadow. Ajumi woke up early the next morning, feeling a knot of dread in her stomach. She tried to shake off the unease feeling as she got dressed for school, but the memories of Aremu's behavior the night before haunted her. She forced herself to focus on the routine of getting ready for school as usual, hoping that the familiar tasks would help her calm her nerves. At breakfast, Ajumi sat quietly, pushing her food around her table. Ajoke chatted cheerfully about the upcoming festival in their village. Her excitement was seen all over. Aremu joined in the conversation, his response warm and engaging. But Ajumi could feel his eyes on her, watching her every move. "Ajumi, are you excited for the festival?" Ajoke asked with a bright smile. Ajumi nodded, managing a small smile in return. "Yes, Mama, it sounds fun." "Good," Ajoke said, patting her hand. "It's a wonderful way to connect with our tradition and enjoy time with the community." Aremu leaned forward, his gaze intense. "And it's important for us to spend time together as a family, right, Ajumi?" She nodded again, her throat this time around tight. She wanted to scream, to tell her mother what Aremu had done and said to her, but fear kept her silent. She knew her mother loved Aremu and trusted him completely. What if she didn't believe her? After breakfast, Ajoke walked Ajumi to school, chatting about her plans for the day. Ajumi tried to listen, but her mind kept drifting back to the night before. She wished she could tell her mother everything, but the words couldn't come out of her mouth. At school, Ajumi struggled to concentrate. Her teachers noticed her distraction, but she brushed off their concern, insisting she was fine. She didn't know how to explain the feeling and fear inside of her. She felt trapped, unable to escape the dark shadow that Aremu had casted over her life. During break hour, Ajumi sat alone on a bench, watching the other children playing. She envied their carefree laughter, wishing she could join them. But the fear and confusion weighed heavily on her, making it impossible to enjoy the simple pleasure of childhood. One of her classmates, Kemi, noticed her sitting alone and came over. "Hey Ajumi, do you want to play with us?" Ajumi forced a smile. "Maybe later, Kemi. I'm just a little tired." Kemi looked concerned. "Are you sure you're okay?" Ajumi nodded to reassure her friend. "Yes, I am fine. Thanks for asking." Kemi hesitated, then nodded. "It's okay. If you need anything, just let me know." Ajumi watched her friend run off to join the others, feeling a bit of loneliness. She wanted to reach out, to tell someone what she was going through, but the fear of Aremu's threats kept her silent. After school, Ajumi walked home alone, her mind racing with thoughts of what awaits her at home. She is afraid of being alone with Aremu, but she didn't know how to avoid it. She felt trapped in a nightmare with no way out. When she arrived home, Ajoke was busy in the kitchen preparing dinner. Aremu was in the living room reading a book. He looked up as she entered, a smile spreading across his face. "Welcome home, Ajumi," he said, his tone warm and friendly. "How was school?" "It was fine," she replied quietly, avoiding his gaze. "Good to hear," he said, closing his book. "Why don't you go wash up for dinner?" Ajumi nodded and hurried to her room, relief washing over her as she closed the door behind her. She took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart. She wished she could lock the door, but she knew that would only raise questions from her mother. As she washed her hands, she caught a glimpse of herself in the mirror. Her eyes were wide with fear, and she looked much more older than her age. She couldn't recognize the girl staring back at her. She felt like a stranger in her own skin, her innocence stolen by the man who was supposed to protect her. That night, as they sat down for dinner, Ajumi kept her eyes on her plate, avoiding Aremu's gaze. Ajoke chatted cheerfully, unaware of the tension between her daughter and her husband. Ajumi felt a feeling of anger and frustration. Why couldn't her mother see what was happening? Why didn't she sense that something was wrong? After dinner, Ajoke suggested they watch a movie together. Ajumi wanted to refuse, to escape to the safety of her room, but didn't want to raise suspicion. She sat on the couch, wedged between her mother and Aremu, trying to focus on the screen. Aremu's arm rested on the back of the couch, his fingers occasionally brushing against Ajumi's shoulder. Each touch sent a shiver of fear through her, but she forced herself to stay still, not wanting to alert her mother. She felt like a prisoner in her own home, trapped by the very person who is supposed to keep her safe. When the movie ended, Ajumi quickly excused herself and went to her room. She closed the door and leaned against it, tears streaming down her face. She felt so alone, so scared, and she didn't know what to do. She clutched the pendant her father had given her, seeking comfort in its familiar shape. As she lay in bed, she whispered a prayer to the spirits, begging for protection and strength. She didn't know how she would survive this nightmare, but she knew she had to find a way. She vowed to herself that she would not let Aremu's action define her. She was more than his victim. She was a warrior, a savior, and she would find a way to reclaim her life. The next morning, Ajumi woke up with a new sense of determination. She knew she had to do something to protect herself, but didn't know where to start. She decided to begin by documenting everything that happens, keeping a diary of Aremu's action. She hoped that one day, her words would help her find justice. At school, Ajumi struggled to concentrate, her mind preoccupied with thoughts of Aremu and his next move. She felt disconnected from her classmates, unable to join in their laughter and play. She watched them from a distance, feeling like an outsider in her own life. During recess, she found a quiet spot under a tree and took out her notebook. She began to write, pouring out her pain and fear onto the pages. It was a small step, but it gave her a sense of control, a glimmer of hope in the darkness. As the day passes, Ajumi continued to document everything in her diary. She found comfort in the art of writing, feeling a sense of empowerment as she recorded everyday experience with her stepfather. She knew she couldn't stay silent forever. She had to find a way to make her voice heard. One evening, as Ajoke and Aremu prepared for bed, Aremu looked at Ajumi with a seductive eyes. Ajumi quickly ran to her room, sat on her bed, clutching her diary. She whispered a prayer to the spirit, asking for the courage to speak out. She knew it wouldn't be easy, but she had to try. She couldn't let Aremu continue to hurt her and take away her innocence. The next morning, Ajumi woke up with a renewed sense of hope. She decided to talk to her teacher, hoping that she would believe her and help her find a way to stop Aremu before it's too late. She knew it was a risk, but she had to take it. She couldn't stay silent any longer. If not, Aremu will surely do what he has in mind. At school, she waited until the end of the day, then approached her teacher, Miss Adesua, who was known for her kindness and understanding. Ajumi took a deep breath and whispered, "Miss Adesua, can I talk to you about something important, please?" Miss Adesua looked at her with concern. "Of course, Ajumi. Let's go to my office." In the privacy of the office, Ajumi hesitated, her heart pounding with fear. But she knew she had to speak up. She took a deep breath and began to tell her teacher about Aremu, her stepfather, about the things he had done and how scared she is. Miss Adesua listened attentively, her expression serious. When Ajumi finished, she reached out and took her hands. "Ajumi, thanks for telling me. I'm so sorry you had to go through all this. I'm going to help you, I promise." Ajumi felt a wave of relief wash over her. She wasn't alone anymore. She had someone who believed her, someone who would help her find a way to stop Aremu. She felt a spark of hope rising within her. She was a warrior, of course, and she would fight back against darkness. She would reclaim her life one step at a time. Ajumi walked home from school with a mix of fear and hope swirling in her heart. Miss Adesua had promised to help, but the reality of what she had done settled heavily on her shoulders. She knew that confronting Aremu's action would not be easy, and she's afraid of the consequences she would face. As she reached home, the familiar smell of dinner from cooking greeted her. Ajoke was in the kitchen as usual, humming a tune as she stirred a pot on the stove. Aremu sat in the living room, reading a newspaper. His presence felt more oppressive than ever, but Ajumi gathered her courage and greeted them as usual. "How was school today, Ajumi?" Ajoke asked, smiling warmly. "It was fine, Mama," Ajumi replied, forcing a smile. "I have a bit of homework to do before dinner." Ajoke nodded, turning back to her cooking. "All right, dear. Dinner will be ready soon." Ajumi hurried to her room, closing the door behind her. She sat on her bed, clutching her diary, her heart pounding with fear and anxiety. She had taken the first step by telling Miss Adesua, but she knew the road ahead would be difficult. She prayed silently for strength, knowing that she would need every bit of it to face what was coming. Dinner was a tense affair. Ajumi could barely eat, her stomach filled with fear. Aremu tried to engage her in conversation, but she kept her answers short, avoiding his gaze. Ajoke noticed her daughter's quietness, but attributed it to tiredness from school. After dinner, Ajoke and Aremu settled in the living room to watch TV. Ajumi left to her room, hoping to find solace in her books. She tried to focus on her homework, but her mind kept drifting to the conversation she had with Miss Adesua. She wondered what her teacher would do and how soon she could expect help before things get out of hand. Just as she was about to start her homework, there was a knock on her door. Aremu entered without even waiting for an invitation. Ajumi's heart raced with fear as he closed the door behind him. "Ajumi, we need to talk," he said, his voice low and scary. "I know you have been speaking to someone about our special moments together." Ajumi felt a cold sweat break out on her forehead. She had hoped that her conversation with Miss Adesua would remain a secret for a little longer, but it seems Aremu had already found out. How he found out, she couldn't figure it out. "You are lying," she whispered, her voice shaking. "I haven't said anything." Aremu's eyes narrowed. "Don't play games with me, girl. You think you can tell your little teacher and she will help you? You are wrong. No one will believe you. If you try to tell anyone else, I will make sure you regret it." Ajumi's heart sank. The fear she felt was overwhelming, but she knew she couldn't back down now. She had to find a way to protect herself, even if it meant facing Aremu's words. "I don't believe you," she said, her voice stronger than she felt. "I will tell someone and they will believe me." Aremu's face twisted in anger. He stepped closer, his hands raised as if to strike her. Ajumi closed her eyes, but before he could do anything, Ajoke called from the living room. "Aremu, come help me with the TV. It's acting up again." Aremu hesitated, glaring at Ajumi. "This isn't over yet," he hissed before turning and leaving the room. Ajumi sat on her bed, trembling with fear and relief. She knew she had to be careful, but she also knew she couldn't give up. She had to find a way to stop Aremu and to make her mother see the truth. The next day at school, Ajumi found a moment to speak to Miss Adesua. She pulled her teacher aside during break hours, her eyes wide with fear. "Miss Adesua, Aremu knew I told you," she whispered. "He threatened me. I am scared." Miss Adesua's face grew serious. "Ajumi, I'm so sorry you are going through this. We need to act quickly. I will speak to the principal and arrange a meeting with your mother. We will find a way to keep you safe." Ajumi nodded, her heart heavy with fear, but also a glimmer of hope. She knew it wouldn't be easy, but she was determined to end this suffering and torture she had endured for a very young age. The next week, the school decided to invite Mrs. Ajoke, Ajumi's mother, to explain to her what the daughter had told them. Miss Adesua narrated everything Ajumi had told her to the mother. How the stepfather always tried to take advantage of her innocence every now and then. Mrs. Ajumi was heartbroken and ashamed of herself as well. She has failed the duty of a mother. She was engrossed in her new life with Aremu that has made her turn a blind eye to everything else, including her doctor. Tears flowed down her eyes as she thanked the teachers and left with Ajumi. Ajoke walked home with Ajumi, her mind a whirlwind of emotion. The things revealed to her in the meeting had shaken her to the core. She glanced down at her daughter, whose face was a mixture of relief and lingering fear. Guilt clouded Ajoke's heart. How could she have missed these signs? How could she have failed to protect her own child? She wondered. When they reached home, Ajoke turned to Ajumi, her voice trembling. Ajumi, go to your room and rest. I need to talk to Aremu. Ajumi nodded. Mama, please be careful. I will, dear, Ajoke replied, trying to muster a reassuring smile. Just go and rest, okay? As Ajumi went to her room, Ajoke strengthened herself. She had to confront Aremu to get to the bottom of this nightmare. She found him in the living room, watching TV. He looked up and smiled as she entered, but the smile faded when he saw the seriousness in her expression.